Okay. So what's the story now? I'm reading, I'm talking, and then Lola's translating, right?
Yes.
Okay. Very good. Let's start this thing with ohms. 3 ohms. I'm channeling Lola now for a minute. Make sure she translates all this. So,
Estoy, si se escucha la traducción,
Lola would say,
pueden levantar la mano los que escuchan en
she's translating?
español. Entonces sería diciendo, ¿está traduciendo? Levanten la mano si se escucha,
I'm
¿sí?
starting this
Yo no los veo.
session now.
Entonces estoy comenzando la sesión ahora.
And you guys are
En
like
español se te escucha.
praising me. You're like building me up with so much praise. And maybe you think that that's going to make me do a better session or something, like give you better knowledge. I don't know. It's probably just totally sincere that you just, you know, it's perfectly sincere, but it could be that you think that maybe I'll give a better knowledge talk. So maybe, maybe not. Anyway, I was thinking it might be interesting if the next time we do a session, that instead of you guys praising me, you just make me out to look like a real idiot. Like you do the absolute opposite.
Because expectations
And
reduce the joy, right?
what?
Expectations reduce the joy.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yes.
So, so it would just be interesting to see if I give a better knowledge session, if I'm praised or if I'm not, or if I'm like attacked, like basically attacked. So I would never say this. I've never said anything like this before, but because Lola is so much a part of, you know, like she's the one who's pushing this session, I felt like I would just channel her for a minute. Okay. So that's something that she would say. It's her suggestion. So I'm going through an interesting moment right now. And what we're going to do today is we're going to go through the story of Prahlada, which is one of my favorite stories in the Yoga Vasishtha. And the story of Prahlada is, I hope I don't have any Sanskrit proper people because I'm not pronouncing his name right. It's something.
I'm here.
Who's that? How do you say Prahlada? Whoever said I'm here.
Prahlada.
Is that Amit?
Yeah.
Okay. How do you say it? One more time.
Pulata.
Wait,
Pulata.
come on.
Pulata. Pulata.
Pulata.
Yeah.
So it's really different. Okay. So Pulata, I can't do that. I'm just going to go ahead and say it the wrong way. Say it like it looks. Prahlada is a demon, and he's the prince of the demons. And he's actually, his father was killed very recently because of some politics between the demons and the gods. The gods
entre los demonios y los dioses. Los demonios eran como
whatever. They're kind of like the bad guys, and then the gods are like the good guys, something like that. That's very simplistic. But basically, Prahlada is from a family who rules the demons. His father was a king, and his mother is the queen, and now they've all been destroyed or sent. You know, the king was destroyed, but everybody else was sent in many different directions in chaos. And so Prahlada is kind of wondering what is going on. Like, I don't know what to do now. So he makes a decision, and he decides that he's going to just put all his attention into the god Vishnu. Vishnu is the maintainer. You have the three main gods in the deity of the Trinity of Hinduism. You have the Brahman, the creator, and Shiva, the destroyer, and Vishnu is the maintainer. And so Prahlada decides he's going to put all his attention there. And then he'll see what happens, because that's the only thing that makes sense to him. So we're going to go into the way I lead these Yoga Vasishtha sessions is it's different than the way other people do it. I make it very interactive. So in other words, I ask you to participate, and we're going to define some of the words. But before we even start, I'd like to have a sense of how many people. I want you to just raise your hand and hold it up for the first time if this is your first session. Okay? So raise your, and I'm going to scan through all the screens. So if your first Yoga Vasishtha session with me, so raise your hand. Okay? So I'm only seeing 4 or 5. I'm still, keep your hand up. I'm checking the screen to see how many people. And it looks like we have about 1/3 of the people. It's your first Yoga Vasishtha session with me. It's still, keep your hand up still. I'm still scanning and looking at, oh, so many people are not even showing their screen. This is depressing. You all have to show your screen. It's not nice for you to not show your screen. We're not going to look at you or anything. Zuli is there. Hi, Zuli. I haven't seen you in so long. Oh, my God. How are you doing? You're doing good?
Yeah. Hi, Bill. How are you? I'm fine.
Good.
Okay.
I'm good. It's great
I'm
to see
here for my mom. For that my camera is off.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Okay, so I think what's going to happen is I'm going to do the 7 layers of existence, because unless people are really sort of, you know, unless you've seen me do this, there's one word that if you don't get the one word in Yoga Vasishtha, then you're missing almost all of it. So we'll do a relatively quick. We did this last time. I'm sorry for those that went through it last time. But we're gonna do a yoga. I might need to share. Oh, I can share my screen. I'm allowed to do that. Okay, great. So we're gonna go through something in Art of Living that's pretty well known called the 7 layers of existence, but we're gonna go through it a little bit more in depth. So what are the 7 layers? I want you guys to participate and help me out here. We have, somebody just tell me the 7 layers. You can all see my screen? Yes? Okay. Somebody tell me the 7 layers.
Body, cuerpo.
Okay, body.
Breath.
Sorry.
Cuerpo.
Cuerpo.
Breathing.
We have
Respiración.
Mente, memoria.
Respiración. mind,
Right.
Memory.
Mind,
Mente.
intellect.
Intelecto.
intelecto,
Something's wrong with my
memoria,
Ego.
intellect. Intellecto. Sorry.
Memoria.
Memory.
No.
Memoria.
And ego is the same.
Ego.
ego,
And ser. Or,
Self.
okay, so these are the 7 layers. And we are going to go a little bit deeper into these. And what is the purpose of the intellect? Somebody tell me that. First of all, why are there green lines? There's a very strong green line there between body, breath, and
discernir,
what is it?
Discern.
These are what?
sutil.
Bill, you're muted.
Are you hearing me now?
Yes.
So what is the difference between the layers above the line and the layers below?
Tangible and intangible.
Okay.
Perdón, Lola, ¿está habilitado el chat para que puedan escribir en el chat? Porque si escriben, podemos Clara y yo leerle en inglés a Bill. Tal vez escribir.
No, no está habilitado.
Sí, cómo no.
Is everything
no.
okay? Something
No
seems
está habilitado.
Yes, I am checking if the chat if they can write in the chat. Clara and me, we can read for you in English what you are saying.
okay, or people can unmute themselves and they
Okay.
can say. I know we have a lot of people. So above the line, we have physical or tangible, and below the line, we have in the realm of energy. Okay? And that's not tangible. It's just energy. It's like, I don't know how, but it's real, it's solid. So what's the function of intellect?
To discern between right and wrong and analyze.
Analysis, discrimination.
Judge.
Judgment.
Juzgar.
Sí.
Discernir, claro, y juzgar.
What's the function of memory?
Almacenar.
Yes.
El almacenamiento de
recuerdo.
Remembering
remembering.
Storage of
everything.
events.
Lola,
Hay impresiones.
Impression.
Chicos, no se escucha la traducción en español.
sí, ya está solucionado.
Sí, ahora ahí
Okay.
se escucha, Loli, sí, ahora sí.
What is the purpose of ego? What does the ego do?
Individualize oneself.
The ego is identification.
Identification, yeah.
Identificación.
Conflicto.
It creates separation
Separación.
or conflict. Okay, so ego has all these different functions, and let's make sure that we know that these are
Ah,
Ego is in red. I don't know how it got in red. Okay. So what is the function of the mind?
Perception.
where my attention.
We're defining it as
Registrar
where my
experiencias.
attention is.
El aquí y ahora.
Where my attention is in
Ah.
any given moment. Okay? That's what the mind is. So the mind can go, if the mind gets into a fight with my wife or something like that, then I'm in my ego, because that's where the separation is kicking in. If the mind is experiencing kidney stones or some really painful thing, then if the mind is, it goes to the body. If I'm walking up a mountain like I was a few hours ago, and my breath is really puffing and huffing because I'm not used to walking up a mountain, then my attention goes to the breath. If the mind is solving a math problem, it might go to the intellect. So the mind can go many, if I'm in a traumatic moment, if I'm having a recurring idea about something from the past, then my mind goes to the memory. Is this making sense? So all of these 6 layers, they each have their own function. We could say 7 layers or 7 functions, right? 7 layers of existencia, something like that. Okay? So what we're going to call all of these layers, we're going to call them the drama. This is the drama of my life. Okay? And I have another layer, which we haven't talked about yet, called self. So what is the self? I mean, I know people out there know this, so you have to start telling me.
La conciencia.
It's the
Observar.
consciousness.
Paz.
Self is consciousness.
Conciencia.
And we're going to call it pure consciousness.
Pure consciousness.
And we're
Lo que
going to
no
add the word
cambia.
infinite. What was it?
Infinite.
Completud.
No change.
We
Not
could
change.
say, what was it?
It doesn't change, he said.
Okay. It doesn't change. So
Not
no
changing.
change. No cambia. Since most of you are Spanish. It doesn't change. It's unaffected. Okay, and we could say that this is free. Or libre. So it's free from drama. All the stuff above the line gets stuck. We get stuck in the drama. Here we get stuck. ¿Cómo se dice en español? Escuchar.
Atascado.
Atascado.
Atacada.
Varado, atascado, sí.
We get stuck in the drama, right? Is that right? Okay. And if we use an analogy, the best analogy, the simplest analogy for me is the analogy of a movie screen. So if I have a little white movie screen here, and we're looking at that movie screen, and after 10 minutes while we're watching the movie, are you aware of the screen or not?
No.
You forgot about the screen. Does the screen change? No. Is the screen affected? If the screen is, if the movie is bad, does the screen judge the movie? No? Does the screen judge the movie? Or it accepts whatever movie comes on?
No.
It accepts.
It only accepts, right? So the point is that this consciousness is unchanging, it's unaffected, it's infinite, which means it doesn't have any limitations or any boundaries, right? The ego is full of limitations. So there's this part of you now that has been defined.
No.
Has been defined as being totally free, unaffected, eternal. It never was born and it never will die. It's the same. There's 139 people on this Zoom call. There's probably 130 bodies on this call, or 150 bodies or something. I don't know, people that are listening. But the point is, there's only one self. So we're totally connected. And when the word self is used in the book Yoga Vasishtha, or self-knowledge, or self-realization, or referring back to the self, this is what it's talking about. It's talking about this redefined you. Before you understood this, what do you call it? This definition of the word self, you probably had some idea you were caught up in these 7 layers. But there is a part that's completely free, that's transcendent. And the beauty of what we do in the breathing techniques, I think probably most of you have done the Sudarshan Kriya, which is the breathing technique, is the breath has the ability to move us through the intellect and the mind and the memory and the ego. The breath moves us back to the self. And if we can practice this every day, another thing that does this is meditation. If we meditate, then meditation also takes us back to the self. Are there any questions about all this? No. Not one question? Incredible. Do you believe me? I guess there's nobody here because nobody believes me.
Yes.
Yes. I
We all
believe you.
believe you.
I believe. Okay, great. So you believe.
Lola, una pregunta, Javier habla. Guruji habla de...
Si no se lo digo yo se lo digo. Yo le digo, vale.
He's
Decime.
going to ask something, Bill. So
¿Hablo o no hablo? No entiendo.
Sí, habla.
Ok.
Sí, habla.
La pregunta es, Guruji habla de que existe
La pregunta es, ¿Guruji habla que existe?
un Purusha
Pero está escuchando.
Guruji says there is Purusha. Dale, seguí, Javi.
Ale, le tenés que traducir.
Sí, estoy esperando que hable
Bueno,
Javi.
Guruji habla de un Purusha individual que tiene el tamaño de un dedo gordo, que en realidad es el que encarna y habita en el pecho. ¿Cómo se junta esto con que todo es lo mismo? Aunque existe un solo Purusha.
Bill, Javi is saying that Guruji says there is an individual Purusha, which is the thumb, thumb, and it is located in the heart, and this is the individual soul. And how can we understand that with the big consciousness, the one? How do we understand this individual consciousness regarding the big consciousness?
I think that the individual soul, another word for it is,
¿estás traduciendo?
another word for it is jiva that's used. I think it's a little different than the self, the way we're defining self, because self has no individuality. So there's somewhere maybe between the ego and the self, somewhere in there, there's an individual identity, or there's an individual, so I don't know exactly. I'm just going to keep it very clear that the self is not have an individual. Now, the self in me has some individuality. That's what I'm calling the ego. So if instead of getting into a discussion that I don't really know how to get into, let's keep it simple. The self is infinite, and anything else is a little bit above the line. Okay? But the self is the foundation. The self, if you take away the consciousness, you can't have an intellect or a memory or an ego. The body has no value, right? So when we remove the consciousness, then nothing else it can exist. Okay, good. So we're gonna move on, I think. So here we have.
Yo tengo una pregunta.
Sí.
Please, another question. Dale. No se escucha nada.
Let's move on.
It doesn't seem like the question is coming, so let's forget it.
Okay.
So the next thing I'd like to ask you about is the word devotion. What does the word devotion mean? Is the chat box working?
Fe.
Pueden escribir en el chat si quieren, o pueden desmutearse y hablar.
Ya la habilité.
The chat is not working, but we can speak.
Okay,
Sí.
what does the word devotion mean?
Pueden hablar en el chat. It is supreme love, surrender, the connection with divinity, bliss, trust, surrender, unconditional love, admire, love, surrender, faith, infinite faith. It's the peak of love, passion, unconditional love.
Le puedes dar tiempo para que escriba un poco también.
What else? Keep telling me.
Wonder, adoration, purity, unity with the biggest, union, plentiness, truth, honoring the sacred, trust, belongingness, divine ecstasies,
Wow.
absence of ego, divine connection, light, absolute freedom, pinnacle of love, pinnacle of love. Oh, sorry. Divine nectar, innocence, peace. Peace. Everything, the whole. Dissolving. The grace of the Master and the blessing. Finding a sense for the existence.
Finding what?
The sense for the existence.
Essence? Is it essence?
Sense, a purpose. Purpose for the existence. Divine bliss. Knowing the whole, the totality. Also the void. The void. Void. Divine longingness. Divine longing. Divine longing. To be one with the Guru. The mother, the follower, going beyond one to be everybody. Gratefulness, loyalty,
What was it?
loyalty, absolute freedom. Oh, I already said it.
Okay, great. Let's stop. I filled up my space. Okay, this is wonderful. So we have all of this wonderful stuff. This is devotion. So why is devotion important? Why is devotion important?
I think because it has the highest, all the highest feelings, or I don't, not feelings, but because someone says, because it holds us. Because it puts us in contact with the self, because it's a guide to ourself, because it's living in harmony with what it is, because it is important to have trust, because your life becomes a garden, is the mature way of love to live your dharma, because it reminds us who we are, because it gives purpose to the existence. It's our origin. It connects us to the self. We surrender because we can reach the consciousness.
So these are all very good answers. So why is devotion something that's elusive? Why is devotion an elusive quality to express or to live? That's my next question. Why is it elusive? Why is it difficult? Why does it seem not so easy?
Mm-hmm.
That's the question.
Because of ego, because not everybody feel unity. Because of prejudice, because of duality of the mind, because of social conditioning, because we don't let the past go, because we disconnect, because it's not easy to surrender, because the mind and the ego, limitations, lack of intensity, judgments, because we get stuck in the layers, because of attachments, because it's difficult to surrender and trust, because of fear, because we believe we are separated, that we are not part of divinity, because we have to go through the other layers, because we are on the five senses, because of the
Oh my God.
our mind, cultural conditioning, because it's not as tangible as total belief.
So I believe these are very good answers. And it's very interesting because if we can just take this one quality, devotion, then we can blossom into the highest. Then our life becomes easy. All of those qualities that you were mentioning, why we don't, they disappear. If we can just trust and we can just surrender and we can just allow ourselves to be connected, to be self, to live self, to realize self, then all of those things disappear. All of those things that keep us separate. Isn't it? Is it making sense?
Yes.
So just to, in the tradition, that Guruji is coming from, there's such a strong emphasis on this thing of devotion. And yet, for all of the very good reasons that people were saying, it's not so easy. And yet, if we can somehow put ourselves, keep ourselves, it's like a very innocent state almost, isn't it? It's a kind of innocence. It's a kind of childlike state where we're very pure and we're just in trust. So just to be aware of this and just to notice this. What if I could just live in devotion? Right? What if I could be connected? And the devotion is only to the self. So that's what this story is about. So we'll get into the story. So this guy, he's a demon. His father, his kingdom has been destroyed. He was at the highest. Now he's at the lowest. And he decides to put all his attention into this Vishnu, who is the highest. And he decides, and then this is what happens in the story. Every day, Prahlada worshiped the Lord Vishnu by thought, word, and deed. As the immediate fruit of such worship, all of the noble qualities like wisdom and dispassion grew in him. Lord Vishnu went to where Prahlada was worshiping him. Seeing that Lord Vishnu himself had come to the palace, Prahlada prayed, I take refuge in the Lord, in whom the three worlds rejoice, who is the supreme light, which destroys darkness of every kind of ignorance and impurity, who is the refuge of the helpless, who alone is the Lord, whose refuge is worth seeking, the unborn, the surest security. You are radiant like the blue lotus or the blue jewel. Your body is blue like the zenith of the clear winter sky. I take refuge in you. The Lord says, O Prahlada, you are an ocean of good qualities. You are indeed the jewel among the demons. Ask of me any boon of your choice, which is conducive to the cessation of the sorrow of birth. Prahlada says, Lord, you are the indwelling presence of all beings, and you grant the fruition of all our wishes. Grant me that boon which you consider to be limitless and infinite. The Lord says, Prahlada, may you be endowed with the spirit of inquiry until you rest in the infinite Brahman, so that all your delusions might come to an end and you may attain the highest fruit, the highest blessing. Having said this, the Lord disappeared. So they have a very short conversation. And Prahlada is blessed with the spirit of inquiry. So what does that mean, the spirit of inquiry? He's about to tell us. Prahlada contemplated. The Lord commanded, be continually engaged in inquiry. Hence, I shall engage myself in inquiry into the self. Surely I am not this world, which is outside, inert, composed of trees, shrubs, and mountains. Nor am I the body, which was born on account of the movement of life breath, which seems to live for a very brief moment. I am not sound, which is apprehended by the inert substance known as the ear, which is a momentary movement of air and devoid of form, devoid of existence. I am not the sense or experience of touch, which is also momentary, which is able to function only on account of the infinite consciousness. Nor am I the sense of taste, based on the ever-changing, restless tongue, devoted to its objects. I am not the sense of sight or form, which is momentary and which is but a perversion of the understanding of the seer. Nor am I the sense of smell, which is an imaginary creation of the nose, which has an indeterminate form. I am peace beyond thought. I now recollect the truth that I am the self, which is omnipresent, in which there is no conceptualization. It is by that self that all the senses and their experiences are made possible. For it is the inner light. It is because of that inner light that these objects acquire their apparent substantiality. It is thanks to that inner light of consciousness, which is free from all modifications, that the sun is hot, the moon is cool, the mountain is heavy, and water is liquid. It is the cause of all effects that manifest as this creation, but it is itself uncaused. I salute this self, which is its own light, free from the duality of knower and known, subject and object. In it exist all things of this universe, and into it they enter. I salute this self, which is its own light. In it all things enter. When thought of by this consciousness, these things seem to come into being, and when thought of as non-existent, they reach their end. All these infinite objects appear in the limitless space of consciousness. They appear to grow and they appear to diminish, just as a shadow seems to grow and diminish in the light of the sun. This self or inner light of consciousness is unknown. It is unseen. It is attained by those who have purified their heart. But by the holy ones, it is seen in the supremely pure cosmic space of consciousness. This self exists in an undivided state in the three worlds. The one self is therefore the experiencer in all, Hence, the self is said to have 1,000 hands and 1,000 eyes. With this beauteous body of the sun, this self, which is I, roams the space, as also in the body of air. I am woman. I am man. I am the youth. I am the senile old man. And on account of embodiment, I am apparently born here. From the ground of infinite consciousness, I raise trees and plants, being present in them as their very essence. The self is present in trees and plants as their very essence. Just as clay in the hands of a playful child, this world appearance is pervaded by me for my own delight. This world exists in me, self or infinite consciousness, just as a reflection seems to exist in a mirror. I am the fragrance in flowers, the light in radiance. Even in that light, I am the experience. Whatever mobile and immobile beings exist in this universe, I am their supreme truth or consciousness, free from conceptualization. I am the very essence in all things in the universe. Just as butter exists in milk, liquidity exists in water, even so as the energy of consciousness, I exist in all that exists. The world appearance of the past, present, and future exists in infinite consciousness without the distinction of objectivity. I would say that means without being an object. This world appearance of past, present, and future exists in infinite consciousness without being an object. It's like part of it. This omnipresent, omnipotent cosmic being is the self, which is indicated by the I. Truly, it was infinite consciousness that existed. But how has this finite, limited ego sense arisen in it without justification or support? What has given rise to the delusion which expresses itself in statements like this is you and this is I? What is this body? What is bodilessness? Who lives and who dies? Surely my ancestors were stupid in that they abandoned this infinite consciousness and roamed this little earth. What comparison is there between the vision of the infinite and this fearful vanity known as worldly glory, full of dreadful desires and cravings? This vision of the infinite consciousness is pure and is of the nature of supreme peace. It's surely the very best among visions possible in this universe. The sovereignty of the world exists in consciousness. Why do people not experience truth that there is nothing outside of consciousness? Everything, everywhere, at all times is easily obtained through consciousness, which is omnipresent and undifferentiated. The light that shines in the sun and the moon, the energy that animates the gods, the characteristics of the mind and the elements, the qualities and faculties that exist in nature, and the infinite variety of the manifestations of energy and intelligence are all expansions and functions of the one cosmic consciousness, which in itself is undivided and unmodified. The infinite consciousness pervades simultaneously the three periods of time and experiences infinite worlds. This consciousness experiences simultaneously what is sweet and what is bitter. It's tranquil, it's at peace, because this consciousness is in itself free from all modifications, because it is subtle and experiences all things at the same time. It is ever at peace. Because this consciousness is in itself free from all modifications, because it is subtle and experiences all things at the same time, it is always at peace and homogeneous, even while apparently experiencing diversity. When the apparently transformed becoming resorts to or rests on that being which has not undergone any modification, the former is freed from sorrow. When the apparently transformed becoming, the part of me that thinks it needs something else, it has to become something else. When that apparently transformed becoming goes back to that being which has not undergone any modification, which has never changed, the former, the part of me that's looking for something, is freed from sorrow. So this is a formula to free yourself from sorrow. You just go back to that part of you that's never changed, which is the self. Simply relax, go back to the self, and you're free from sorrow because you're not looking for something else. There's nothing that you want. There's nothing you need. Yeah? And when what is, this is the second half of the sentence, when what is seen by what is not, or by the mind in which there is no movement of thought, when what is seen by what is not seen, which is the self is not seen, it's the seer. That which is seen abandons its wickedness. So there's no more judgment here. You've gone beyond sorrow and you've gone beyond judgment. If we can just go back to the self, which is what we are. When consciousness abandons the perception of the three modes of time, when it's freed from the bondage of objectivity, from the bondage of making something an object or conceptualization, it rests in utter tranquility. It is as if it were unreal because it is beyond description. Hence, some people declare that the self does not exist. But whether there is a self or not, that which is not subject to dissolution is the supreme liberation. On account of the modification, the thought, this consciousness is apparently veiled and is not realized. So when you're watching the movie of your thoughts and your feelings and this constantly changing drama that we're caught up in, the movie screen or the consciousness, the pure consciousness, which is the self, is apparently veiled and it's not realized, right? We're caught in the drama, so we're not realizing the self, which is like the jewel of all the unseen and unseen worlds. I salute the self. Salutations to myself. The undivided consciousness, the jewel of all the seen and unseen worlds. You indeed have been reached very soon. You have been touched. You have been gained. Okay. I have to read you a little bonus paragraph. Live in the present with your consciousness, like all of that stuff about just go back to the self, just go back to the self, just be the self. Forget about all this drama. Just be the self. Do inquiry. What is the self? Where is this self? It's nowhere else. So here's a paragraph somewhere else buried in Yoga Vasishtha that I absolutely love. I'm going to have to read it to you right now. Live in the present. How do I go back to the self? This is a nice little formula. Live in the present with your consciousness externalized momentarily, but without any effort. Your consciousness is externalized in the present moment, but without any effort. When the mind stops linking itself to the past and to the future, it becomes no mind. From moment to moment, your mind dwells on what is and drops it effortlessly at once, the mind becomes no mind, full of purity. When from moment to moment, the mind stops linking itself to past and future, it becomes no moment. It becomes no mind. It is only as long as the mind continues to be agitated that it experiences the diversity of its own projection. It is only as long as the mind continues to be agitated that it experiences the diversity of its own projection, just as rain falls only as long as there are clouds. And it is only as long as the infinite consciousness limits itself to the finite mind that such agitation and expansion take place. When consciousness ceases to be the finite mind, know that the very roots of world illusion are burnt, and there is perfection. Jai Gurudev. So, any questions or comments, or was that too much? How did our translator do? Did she do fabulous?
Bill, there
Yeah.
was part where it said, you are not the senses, you are not the object of the senses, you are all the things that Guruji tells us during the Sudarshan Kriya. It made me remember that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's very simple. You are not the weather. You are the sky. And the weather is passing through the sky. But you are the sky. That's a quote from Pema Chodron. So what about this passage? It's very poetic, I would say. It's very complete, this inquiry into the self. So how did he get there? Since nobody's speaking up.
Yes, now they are saying that it is complex and simple at the same time, that when you are seen by the consciousness, by the infinite consciousness, all malignity falls. And the truth is revealed.
Yeah.
When you are seen by the infinite consciousness. They say very profound, wonderful.
How did he get there from being this demon whose family was destroyed to come into the highest? Anybody want to take that one on?
I'm waiting for the answer. He is talking with Vishnu, they say.
Yeah, he decided to worship Vishnu, to put his whole consciousness into Vishnu. We had a beautiful description of the word devotion. He became totally devoted to Vishnu. And Vishnu gave him the highest, which was the spirit of inquiry. So to look into the, inquire into what is going on, what is happening here. It was that devotion that he had that led him into that next step. Basically, he summoned Vishnu, and then Vishnu said, here, you get the spirit of inquiry.
So the most important thing is the spirit of inquiry. Till you attain the highest truth, the highest blessing, Vishnu tells him.
That's
so
right.
Most important. When he speaks about self-inquiry, is he referring to who am I?
Yeah. Exactly. It's the question, who am I? What am I doing here? What am I here for? What's my purpose? What is this self? What am I really? He goes through and he starts describing, I am not the senses. I'm not the sense of sight or or smell or touch or taste or hearing. These are all just bringing information. But I am the perceiver of the senses. Right? He goes into all of these. I'm not the mountains. I'm not the objects of the senses. I'm not even this body. This body is just a vehicle.
And they are also asking, why is it a demon, the one that experiences all this?
So even if, to me, I love that. That's a good question. Because we all have a demonic side. We've all made some mistakes. We've all done some horrible things. Right? Even a demon has this ability to become realized, to realize the highest truth. It's not reserved for people who are just like saints. It's not only reserved for the gods. That every being has this capacity to figure out who they are as long as they have consciousness.
Someone is saying it's easy that there is a manifestation for a saint, but not it's not so easy that it is a demon. But he surrendered.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's a demon for the mind to understand that it's completely open. Do not judge yourself.
Yeah. It's one of our demons is our judgment, our self-judgment, and our self-blame. Right? That's one of our own demons. It's like an impression. We put ourselves down. We think that we're small. And yet we have this capacity. I mean, if it was just some really great God who was like all of a sudden worshiping Vishnu, it wouldn't be as
Like real, like we don't identify as much as we identify with the demon. They are saying we live with the demons that we also project.
So because we live with these demons also, we have the capacity to come to achieve the highest. Does that make sense?
And also later he speaks about being in the present moment. It's a lot of focus on transcending the three times, the past, the present, the future. Can you talk about that?
Well, that little piece I read was like sort of something other than, it's not in this story, it's somewhere else, but it's a very beautiful thing about living in the present moment. Like the question is, how do I just experience the self?
Yeah.
I just be in this present moment. With my mind, my consciousness is perceiving whatever it is. I'm taking in whatever it is, but it's externalized only in this moment. And then it moves to the next moment, and then the next moment, and then the next moment. Each moment is full 100%. Each moment is fully embraced. The passage that I read last week, or whenever that was, 2 weeks ago, whenever we had our last session, Deva Puja is about worshiping whatever comes. whatever comes to you in your life, you worship that. You give your highest attention. Whether it's good or not so good, whether it feels pleasant or unpleasant, you simply worship whatever comes in your life. And you don't have to seek anything out. You don't have to look for something. Whatever comes to you unsought, you worship that. If I can live like that, then my whole life is worship. Right? So we go back to that. I go back to that story over and over and over again, because to me, it's the ultimate freedom. It's a formula for how to live 100%. Live in a state of worship with full attention to whatever comes to me in each moment. Then my consciousness is fully engaged. I'm not linking to the past or the future. I'm in this moment as it is. It's like we have all this judgment and blame and all these impressions that we bring from childhood and all this garbage. And yet, if I just be in this moment 100%, I'm free. Then the bliss of this moment is hitting me. Free from all modification. Because of the thought, because I have these ideas and thoughts and I have these cravings and ambitions and I should get this or I should become that or I should do all these things. I'm not living in the moment. I'm living in my mind in some other realm. And the beauty of that quote, the mind becomes, when I'm only in this moment, 100%, the mind becomes no mind. There's no mind. It's just the consciousness with whatever is perceived, whatever situation is there. Then I'm living in the deepest level, which is where the wisdom is residing in the self. The self is all knowing. The self is open to all possibilities because it's not full of these preconceived notions. Is it making sense?
Yes. There is no drama there, they say. You know, Bill, I met one person a couple of months ago, and she was explaining, she was telling me that she got enlightened after a situation, and she just told me this: you just be in the present moment. Everything, only thing you need to do is the only thing to be in the present moment. And I was asking her because I couldn't understand fully. So if I am always in the present moment, I won't be planning. I won't be thinking in the future. And she said, no, maybe you are planning, but in that moment, you are just in the present moment planning. And so it's difficult to understand how is to be in the present moment and not having but do you plan?
Just
yes.
Now.
Now.
Why is it difficult?
No.
Because we're stuck in a habit of going into these things, into these other places other than what's happening now. It's not really difficult. It's actually the simplest thing.
The simplest.
We have an idea that it's difficult because that's our habit.
So it's like no mind state.
Yeah.
Because you don't have, you have to be no in the mind, no thinking, no planning, no remembering, just be here now.
Yeah, but in some moments you are thinking, like each of the layers of existence has its own function. And there's times when I go into a memory and that memory is useful. I experience that, but then I move to the next thing. And then the next one, and then the next one. There's times when the intellect is important. I need to do an analysis. I need to make a judgment. So the ego has its function. All of them have their function. The thing is, we get stuck. One of them starts to dominate. One of them starts to take over, and one of us starts to like sort of. We get attached. So just being in each moment for what each moment is.
Yes, and here Jolie is sharing that in Patanjali, Guruji says that present moment, it is not a point in the infinite. It's not a point, it's infinite in all its dimension.
Yes. It's very beautiful. So it has the present moment's not just one point, it has all this depth. It has so much. It's like in the passage we just read, it said this consciousness simultaneously perceives what is sweet and what is bitter. Right? It's perceiving all of the, it's vast. Right? The consciousness, that's what I am. I'm not just this small ego where I'm attached to my own needs. Right? So if something is happening over there that is pulling me or needs me, then my attention goes over there. Like I get impulses sometimes just to call somebody. And they said, oh, I picked this one person out of all the hundreds of people in my phone, or thousands, I don't know how many people are in my phone. I picked this one person, I call them, and they said, wow, it's like you got it. So how does that happen? You get tuned in by practicing going to that infinite consciousness every day. You get tuned in to listen to it's like this thing of a receiver, you know, like the consciousness has so many layers.
Yes. Yes, it is making. Daniela is sharing, when our energy goes down, we get lost in the layers. But if the energy is high, it's easier to observe and to get the utility of the layers, that you don't get lost in them.
Yeah. Yeah, or to be more connected to the self, I would say. More connected to that infinite consciousness that I am.
And someone is asking, why do we get stuck? And you said something that it's a habit that we have to get stuck and to hold on. Why do we get stuck? Why we can't stay in the present moment with all its dimensions and let it go to the next moment, next and next?
So the human behavioral scientists have determined that people are living 70 or 95% in their subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind was formed up until the age of 7 years old. And it's almost impossible to change the subconscious mind except by repeating some different action. So people that have this idea, like victim consciousness, for example, like the world is picking on me or something like that, then I tend to keep going back to that subconscious mind and creating that reality for myself. Because that's what I have, this idea. I'm in victim consciousness. But if I become aware that, no, that's not the best way to live, I'd rather shift out of victim consciousness, I have to start noticing when I go into that and then somehow take a different choice. Is that making sense? I have to somehow consciously start practicing something different. This is the way I understand. So whatever has formed me, I have the potential to change those and create what I want to create, but I have to do it consciously. I don't know if this is making sense. This
Yes,
is what
of course.
I've been understanding. And so if we can start to reprogram ourselves, in a sense, reprogram our subconscious, then we can start to do it, making better choices. When we teach this course to kids in school, we teach, you know, to be button proof, not to let, when someone pushes your anger button, not to give the control to the other person. So when I start to realize somebody's pushing my anger button, oh, let me just walk away, or let me just be free. I'm not going to give my control. I start to make a choice not to give my control to that person. Or when I start to complain in my mind, I realize, you know, complaining is not a very good idea, right? Because it doesn't get me anywhere. All it does is create all this negativity. So I would rather take responsibility. I would rather take some action. So in the courses that I teach now, there's a few simple choices that I'm starting to make rather than go the subconscious way, which is complain, blame, and resist situations. I would rather go towards taking responsibility, forgiving, and accepting situations. So when I see myself going down the wrong road, I say, that's not a great idea. Let me go the other way. Does it make sense? Like I have a conscious awareness that I don't want to go in the wrong direction.
Yes.
And some people have their own impressions. Some people have this thing, I don't deserve to be loved. When they were a young child, somebody said, you don't deserve to be loved to them. And they held on to that impression. Some people have their own, everybody has their own little programs that they're stuck in. I don't know. Is this making sense?
Yes, of course. And hollow and empty, I think it's a way.
Yeah. Hollow and empty and Kriya are very good because they cut our attachment to those impressions. They cut some of that. But also to start being aware of what am I doing in my own mind. It also helps to have a cognitive understanding. It helps a little bit. You have the physiological cleaning that's going on with Kriya and with hollow and empties. It's like a cleansing that's happening. But then you can also start to make different behavioral choices. Is that making sense?
Yes.
So that's more than what we bargained for here. Anyway.
There's another question.
Yeah.
How do you tune with Guruji?
How do you what?
You tune. You communicate with him, you tune.
You practice. So I write him letters. That's one of my things. I like to write him. And when I first started, that thing that you read earlier was out of a thing that I wrote him, and then that was his answer back to me. So you make a connection by deciding, I want this connection. This is devotion. Devotion means I'm putting my attention in connection with this person, with the divine, with the guru, right? I'm putting my attention there, and then that attention is what creates the connection. Just by my decision. So the story I've probably told this story. It's a guru story. It's very short. I went to him one time when I was very new to the art of living, back in about 1993 was my first silence course. And I asked him, I had a chance to be with him one-on-one, and I said, will you be my master? And he said, huh? He said, no, you be the devotee. So, okay, that's not what I want. That's not the answer I'm looking for. I want him to say, I am your master. That's what I was asking for. But he flipped it around. He said, no, you be the devotee. In other words, it's completely up to you. You're the one who makes this relationship. You don't have to, if I tell you I'm your master, it doesn't mean anything. What matters is what's in your consciousness, right? You create that connection. So he ended up giving me an answer that was worth 1,000,000 times more than what I was hoping for. But he gave me that answer. In fact, he said, he corrected, he said, actually, you are a devotee. You don't have to become one, you are a devotee. I was like, oh, I wonder what that means. But now, whatever, 28 years later, I'm finding out what it means. That the connection is here. It's up to me. And now I just live. I just live, and it's assumed. The connection is here. And he tells me what I need. I have a teleprompter. Tells me exactly whatever I need in whatever moment. Do this, don't do this. He doesn't tell me through this. He tells me through the consciousness. And I exercise this. I write him, and I do my best to understand what is the spirit of what he wants. What's the spirit of what he's doing? What's he here for? He's here to share with others. He's really here for others. So in a sense, I've taken on his purpose, which is to be here for others. And so I do as much work as I can to share this knowledge with people. And I also take care of myself, because if I don't take care of myself, then the body will just, right? So, Jagerdev. I lost track of time again, as usual. So, it's been fun. It's probably way too long.
Beautiful.
Okay, good.
Saying thank you, love, wonderful.
Okay, very good. I'm glad you enjoyed. Did I show you? I think I showed last time. This is my house. I live in this beautiful lake. There's the lake. This morning I got to go up and hike up into the mountains and just sit and paint. I paint trees, and stuff like that. Okay. Jagger, Dev. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
We'll see you
Divine, beautiful, incredible.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you so much, Bill. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
I love you.
Love you too.
Bye. See you soon.
Bye, Bill. Bye. Ah.
Wow.
Alguien que tenga guitarra, que se toque un vayan.
Clary.
Clary, dale, tocate un vayan. Así nos vamos con esa devoción.
Gracias.
Pueden silenciar los mix, así cantamos.
Guru Om Guru Shri Jaya Guru 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 Guru Om Guru Om Guru Om Guru Om Guru Om